Hey Dunlap friends! Today we're going to start a chapter book, and it is the sequel, the second book in the Boy Called Bat series, and it is called Bat and the Waiting Game. It's by Elena K. Arnold, and I am reading this for the first time with you, so here we go. Maybe Bat thought there was something better in the world than cradling a sleepy, just-fed baby skunk in your arms, but at this moment, it didn't seem likely. Bat was sitting in his beanbag chair, having just put down the tiny, nearly empty bottle of formula, and Bat's hand licking his fine, soft whiskers with a tiny pink tongue, and then yawning widely to reveal 2 rows of new white teeth, the 6-year-old skunk kit named Thor. After licking his whiskers clean, Thor curled up into a ball in Bat's hand, and Bat held a tiny creature close to his chest, carefully settling into his beanbag, watching as Thor fell into a content sleep. It had been 1 week since Bat's mother had agreed that the family could continue caring for the skunk kit until he was old enough to be released into the wild, and Bat could still barely believe his good luck. With a soft, warm weight of Thor in his hands, Bat looked around the room. He sat across from the window, the bamboo shade rolled up all the way up. The window was half open, and the pleasant breeze blew in. It was springtime, and the air was beginning to feel warm. Bat's bed was neatly made just the way he liked it, with the blue sheet and the red and blue plaid quilt tucked in tight, so that when he climbed in at night, he would feel like he was slipping into a cocoon. A matching red and blue plaid quilt peeked out from the trundle beneath Bat's bed. There was the honey brown dresser where Bat kept his clothes neatly sorted, just how he liked them, and beside that was Bat's bookshelf where he kept all his important things, including his favorite possession, his animal encyclopedia. And there, right next to his animal encyclopedia, was something new. From where Bat sat, the new thing looked like an oddly shaped lump of clay, but Bat had spent enough time holding it and examining it from all angles to know it was actually art. It was a sculpture of the skunk kit, molded out of gray clay, with eyes and a nose and a mouth carved into it, and on the bottom were the words, "From Israel." When Israel had first handed it to Bat on the last Monday of school, it had taken Bat a moment to figure out exactly what he was holding. "It's a skunk kit," Israel said. "I made it in my mom's studio. She fired it in her kiln and everything. So this way, when you're not at home with Thor, you can still have a skunk with you. You know, you can carry it around, like in your pocket or something." Bat had rubbed his thumb down on the smooth, shiny back of the clay lump. It didn't look much like a skunk kit, but its pleasant weight felt good in his hand. And when he flipped it over to find the words "From Israel" at the bottom, a warm, good feeling spread across his chest and up his neck. A friend had given him a gift, and even if it didn't look much like a real baby skunk now nestled in his hands, it definitely deserved a place in his bookshelf, along with his other important things. Chapter 2, Dinner Conversations. Setting the table for dinner was one of Bat's jobs, but that evening, placing 3 plates, 3 cups, 3 forks, 3 placemats, he felt very certain that his sister Janie should have the job instead. For one thing, she refused to let Bat carry Thor while he set the table. He's tucked into his sling, Janie, Bat argued. Lawrence, the veterinarian technician who worked with Mom, had made a sling so Bat could safely carry Thor around. "He's not anywhere near your plate and fork and cup." Janie just stood there and shook her head and crossed her arms. "It's not sanitary," she said. "You'll be violating like 3 different health code regulations." Her logic wasn't logical, but Bat screwed his mouth up tight and breathed in deeply through his nose. It was one of Mom's conditions for raising the skunk kits was no family disharmony, which meant that Bat was supposed to be the stubborn about the skunk stuff, like setting the table with a skunk in his sling. So he turned around and he headed back to his room, where he lifted the sling from where it hung around his neck and tucked it. sleeping Thor inside it into the enclosure, a repurposed dog crate. At least Mom had finally agreed to let Thor sleep in Bat's room. That was something. He didn't really mean to slam the dishes down on the table, not really, and probably Janie wouldn't have even noticed that he put her fork upside down instead of right side up. But she did notice. A few minutes later, when Bats filled Mom's cup and his own cup with lemonade and Janie's cup with plain water. "Thank you, Bat," she said with a big smile. "Sugar is good for my voice before an important audition." And then she took a big gulp of water like it was the best, isn't good, oops, like it was the best thing she ever tasted. "Are you nervous?" Mom asked, spooning enchiladas onto the 3 plates. The hot, melted cheese stretched onto long strips of enchiladas traveled from the serving dish to the plates. "No," said Janie. "Well, maybe a little." Bat waited for Mom to cut the enchilada into pieces. He liked the taste of enchiladas, but the texture of the cheese sometimes grossed him out a little. It was better if Mom cut it into little cubes for him. "Bat, aren't you old enough to cut your own food?" Janie asked. "Yes," Bat answered, "but Mom does it better." "Well, you'll never get good at it unless you practice," Janie said. Bat didn't like the tone of her voice, kind of like a know-it-all. "Sometimes even practicing at something doesn't mean you'll ever get good at it," he said, "like you and singing." "Bat," Mom said in her low warning voice. Bat shrugged. If Janie was going to be mean, he could be mean too, even though he secretly thought that Janie had a beautiful singing voice. They were quiet for a few minutes, just their forks scraping plates and the clink of their cups being set back down. "So you're set on auditioning for the Queen?" Mom asked. Janie nodded. "It's the best part," she said. There's the most room for artistic creativity." Janie had been talking about auditioning for her school's spring play for weeks now, and they were going to perform Alice in Wonderland during the last week of school, and the audition was just a few days. "I'm glad the audition is on a Monday," Bat said, stabbing his enchilada with a fork. Mom smiled. "That's nice of you, Bat. Then Janie can stop talking about it all the time." Bat popped the enchilada cube into his mouth. Delicious. "I don't talk about audition nearly as much as you talk about Thor," Janie said. "How much can anyone say about an audition?" Bat said. "How much can anyone say about a skunk?" Janie said. "Well," said Bat, "did you know that skunks sometimes attack beehives because they like to eat honeybees?" That wild skunk usually only lives about 3 years, but pet skunks can live up to 10. Or how about this? Skunks can survive a snake bite, and skunks aren't fast, and they have bad eyesight, and Bat had a lot more he could have had to say, but Mom interrupted. "How about this? What do the 2 of you have to say about dessert?" Dessert was something that was easy to agree on. Bat thought happily as Mom served him one of those still warm brownies that Janie had made in the afternoon. Chapter 3, Parts. The next day was Saturday. And since it wasn't an every other weekend, Bat got to spend the whole day with Thor. Every other weekend, Dad picked Bat up and Janie up at school on Friday and took them to his apartment. There were good things about the every other weekends. Dad liked going on bike rides. Dad had a small garage, which he kept neatly organized, and was a good place to build things. There was a workout room at Dad's apartment complex that Bat wasn't old enough to use yet, but he would be one day. But especially since Thor had joined the family, Bat wasn't really a fan of the every other weekend because Dad wasn't a fan of animals. Mom, on the other hand, was almost as crazy about animals as Bat was. In a lot of ways, Mom and Dad were opposites, like animals. Mom liked animals, Dad didn't. Mom worked as a veterinarian, Dad worked as a computer engineer. Mom liked to stay home on the weekends, reading and gardening. Dad liked to go out in the world on weekends, riding bikes and playing catch at the park. Bat liked animals, and he liked computers too. He liked to stay home, and he liked to go out in the world. And his name was even made up of parts of both of his parents' names. Bat is short for Bixby Alexander Tam. Bixby for his mom's last name when she was a kid, Alexander because that was Dad's middle name. Bat liked it that he had parts of both of his parents' names in his name. It made sense, since he had parts of both of his parents in the rest of him, too. He had his dad's straight black hair, which came from his dad's Chinese ancestry, and he had his mom's long fingers. He and his mom loved chocolate, and his dad's aversion to touching yucky things. When Bat woke up on Saturday, the first thing he did was go to the bathroom and wash his hands, scoop Thor out of his enclosure and tuck him into his sling. Thor was getting bigger. Bat thought was satisfaction. His little belly had started to go round out from all of the formula Bat had been feeding him. Bat was a good skunk caretaker. The kitchen was quiet. Mom and Janie were still sleeping. Carefully, Bat poured the kit-sized serving of formula into Thor's tiny bottle. He screwed the lid on tightly, and then he held the bottle closely under the warm running water so the formula wouldn't be cold. It was a beautiful day. Bat saw through the window above the kitchen sink. The leaves on the tree were quiet, no wind, and the sky was clear, bright blue, with just a little bit of violet still from the sunrise. "Would you like to dine al fresco?" Bat said to Thor. Al fresco is Italian for outside. Bat knew, because on sunny days at school, his teacher, Mr. Grayson, sometimes says, "Hey gang, let's do reading time al fresco." Bat took the bottle and went out through the back door, sitting on the brick steps that led into the backyard. Thor must have smelled breakfast because he was rustling around in the sling. Gently, Bat scooped him out and settled him into his lap. 6 weeks ago, when Thor had just been born, his nose had been pink, but now it was darkening to a nice shiny black. It twitched up from the bottle, and Bat aimed the bottle down. Thor's tongue darted out, and soon he was happy lapping up the formula, drop by drop. Bat liked it when he could concentrate on just one thing, and he liked it even better when one thing he concentrated on was something he loved, like taking care of Thor. With his thumb, Bat gently stroked the bottle. Bat gently stroked the white strip of fur that ran up Thor's snout and over his head. Thor closed his shiny black eyes and looked to Bat like he was grinning. Short, milky, white hairs curling upward. The back door opened when Bat turned, and Janie stood in the doorway. Her hair, which was not quite as dark as Bat, was wrapped around a bunch of springy pink curlers. "Hey," said Janie. "Hey," said Bat. Janie came the rest of the way outside and sat down next to the step next to Bat, peering down at Thor. "He's getting cuter," she said. "He's getting furrier," said Bat. "But I think he'll always be, always been all the way cute." Janie made a noise halfway between a grunt and a snort, and then she said, "When is he going to start spraying?" "That depends," Bat said. He set down the empty bottle and tucked Thor back into the sling. Skunks only spray when they feel threatened. If Thor never feels threatened, then maybe he'll never spray. "I guess you just have to really try hard to stay calm, huh?" said Janie. "Even if I tease you or tickle you?" She lifted up her hands and wiggled her fingers. Bat hated to be tickled. "Don't," he said. But he tried to say it really in a calm voice because he didn't want to make Thor nervous. Janie laughed. "Just kidding, Bat. Hey, do you want to help me take my curlers out of my hair?" Bat liked to help Janie take with her hair stuff, and she barely ever let him. "Okay," he answered. "Just let me put Thor away first." And that's where we're going to stop today. Chapter 4 is called A Stinky Joke. See you next time. Keep reading.